Works. And in a past life, I was a Dynamics 365 consultant who specialized with working with Power BI. And it looks like we maybe have some folks that don't know a ton about these two products. Dynamics 365 is a CRM product that we're going to talk about with quite a bit of detail coming up in a few minutes. And Power BI is in the Microsoft stack a great reporting tool. It looked like more of you had experience with that, so I won't go into a whole lot of detail there. Let me tell you, let's see, do I need to tell you anything else about me? I think that might be good. Okay, so real quick, let me give you our agenda. I'm going to show you very quickly how to make a great report connection from your Dynamics 365 or Common Data Service data into Power BI and how to build reports from that connection. And then we're going to do that super quick and fast. And then we're going to do a deeper dive. I'm going to show you why you might want to use the tool that I'm working with, which is called Power Query Builder. And we're going to talk about getting the XRM toolbox, which is where Power Query Builder lives. We're going to talk about creating the connection into your data. We're going to talk about creating both service URL queries and data queries, and then we've got some best practices. If everything goes well, we should have 10 to 15 minutes at the end for some questions. And with that, I'm going to change screens real quick. Let's see if I can make that do. That does it. So, oh my goodness. If you can see a screen that looks like a list of records, go ahead and put type in the chat box, in the question box, that you can see that, just so I'm sure we've got it. Okay, yes. Okay, cool. All right, so for those of you that know about Dynamics 365, or Common Data Service, this should look really familiar to you. This is just a view. It's a list of records. And this particular view happens to be a personal view, one that I created for myself. And I want to show you, I'm going to pretend like I'm the sales manager at my company. So I'm Sharon, the sales manager, and I want to show you some things that we did at my company that I want to report on. This right here is the out-of-the-box rating field from Dynamics CRM, and we just modified it so that it looks like a report card, A, B, C, D, F, and we changed it to that from that. It's, I think out of the box, it's warm, hot, and cold. And we did this, I got all my salespeople in a room together and we talked about what made an A opportunity, a B opportunity, and on and on. And in that same couple of days of meetings, we also talked about the process, our sales process, how we move things through and how we make that as efficient and effective as possible, and what things have to be done before we can move it forward. And the result of that was a sales process, and we're actually using the process bar in Dynamics 365 to accomplish that. And as a sales manager, what I do every month is I sit down with each of my salespeople and we talk about what opportunities they want to close this month and what's the best way to get that done. We strategize about how we can close them faster and more efficiently, and we also look at data to make sure that there aren't data errors and all that kind of stuff. And I want to create a report for myself that gives me that at a very quick glance, because I have very limited time. I'm a busy guy, woman. So sorry. All right, so what I did is I opened, 1 minute, control. Wow, this is not working. Sorry, technical difficulties. Very strange. So Wow, sorry, I'm having trouble. Oh my goodness. Sorry. Hold on. Didn't test Zoom it with oh my goodness. There we go. Okay. That's not the screen I want to show you. This is the screen I want to show you. Okay, sorry about that. That was really strange. I want to open a template that I created. And I use templates to just make things faster for myself because, like I said, I don't have very much time. So I click on Open Other Reports, and then right down here, I change this to Templates, and I open a template. And in my template, I have all the basics that I need for every single report, which is really handy. It's a really good best practice that I hope you'll all consider using. And I also use this tool called Power Query Builder. And I'm just going to click right here and open Power Query Builder. And I'm going to create my query really quickly. So the first thing I have to do is I have to load the entities, and I'm going to create a query on the opportunities table. So I'm just going to click opportunities, and then over to the right a bit, you'll see I've got all the views. And that view that I just showed you a second ago, open opportunities for report, is right here. And let me show you, when I click that, look over to the right. When I click that, all of the fields from that report automatically get put in this section called the selected fields area. Very handy. And so now I'm going to come up here and use this button called Fetch XML, because what Power Query Builder does is it creates this programming language called Fetch XML, and it actually creates all the fetch, which is really handy. I've got a list of everything that's going to be included in my Fetch XML, and I'm going to click these two boxes. And then I'm going to come up and I'm going to click Generate Fetch. And this is the actual Fetch XML. It looks kind of like hieroglyphics, right? So I'm going to do Control-All and select it, and Control-C and copy it. And then I'm going to come over to my template and go get a blank query. Oh, wait a minute. Actually, this is my template, so it's already in there. I'm going to go into the Power Query Editor, and I'm going to open the blank query, and I can tell it's a blank query because in the advanced editor, there's not much there. I'm going to highlight all of that and delete it, and I'm just going to paste what was on my clipboard. And I just successfully made the data connection. And normally I'd rename that query, but for now, I'm just going to close and save. It takes a couple of seconds to apply. And now I'm ready to build a report. So I'm just going to come out here. I'm going to grab a bar chart. And in my bar chart, I'm going to put, I want to measure the estimated revenue. And I want to look at it by pipeline phase and by rating right here. And now I've got this chart. Let me make it so you don't have to use Spidey vision. And then the other thing I want to do is right next to it, I want to, well, maybe not right next to it. Yeah. Wow, I can't get this one to drag. There we go. Right next to it, I want to add a matrix. So I want to know what the account is. I want to know what the estimated revenue is. I want to know the pipeline phase. I want to know the owner, and I want to know the rating. So I have a little matrix that goes along with this, and let me just adjust this thing because it's all wonky. And there's my report, right? If I wanted to, that was just wrong. There we go. All right. So, and then I could add some other things, and let me show you what my report ended up looking like. So here's the report after I got done. So I did all of that, and then I spent like another maybe 10 minutes and just got it looking exactly how I wanted to look. And so this is how I would use it. I would go in, and if I was having a meeting with Sharon, I would click Sharon, and then I would choose the dates that we're thinking about, which are July and August. And Sharon's an experienced salesperson, so I know she can handle the A's and B's on her own, no problem. And the ones that I really want to talk to her about are the C's and maybe the D's, right? Because those are the ones that are really on the bubble. And that's what I want to use our time on. And so when I look at my data, it comes out really quickly. It's like this row is clearly one that we need to talk about because it's supposed to close at the end of this month, and it's only in the first phase of the process. So does that mean that she hasn't updated the process bar, or does that mean she's got some kind of barrier? So it's real quick in this kind of view to see what, where the barriers are, where, and also where the big ticket items are, where the dates are a little bit off for our targets, and that, those kinds of questions. So I was able to meet this. So with that, I want to go back to my slides. So now I'm not sharing the sales manager anymore. I'm going to be sharing the Power BI consultant. And let's see. I feel like I'm an air traffic controller. I've got so much going on these screens. Okay. This slide that I prepared for you to talk about the ways that you make the connection into Power BI. There are basically 3 connectors that you can use to make the connection. The Dynamics 365 online connector is probably the most commonly used connector at this point in time. There's also a CDS connector and a Fetch XML, which is what we just did. Power Query Builder, the tool that I just shared with you, is a Fetch XML writer. And I want to talk a little bit about how I've looked at these 3 connectors. These features are the areas where I think these connectors differ. They differ with the way that they handle option sets, the 3 different types of option sets in the CDS, and then how they handle lookup fields, which a lookup field is basically just a connection into a related table. How they query and filter on multiple entities, that has to do with the way that they manage merges. And then general performance, which the way that my sources measured general performance is they were really thinking about what happened when you click the close and apply button in the query editor. And then finally, how these connectors handle in I know a lot of you are not super familiar with Dynamics 365, but in Dynamics 365 there are some fields that are, I think they're a little bit strange. They point to more than a single table. So if you ever see the field called customer, it points to both accounts and contacts. If you see the field owner, it points to both users and teams. And if you see the field regarding, that can point to just about any record in the system, because if you've enabled attach emails in the table settings, you're going to get a regarding field, and that can be on any table in the entire system. And what I found really interesting in this is the Fetch seems to provide really good power here in terms of it's the only connector that's going to bring back both display values and database values. So let me explain that a bit. In a CDS database, probably most databases, an option set has both database values, which are numeric values, and it has display values. And so for most reporting purposes, database values are pretty useless. And back in the early days when I was creating Power BI reports without Power Query Builder, I used to spend lots of time building static tables to be able to identify the display values, because all I was pulling back was the database values, and that's what you get with the Dynamics 365 connector. So that is this is a big improvement there. And then with lookup fields, Power Query Builder will bring back both the GUID, which is that 16-character record ID, and the primary identifier, the primary key in the table, which is usually the name. In the opportunity table, it's the field called topic. In the account entity, it's called account name, and every table has a primary key like that, and it'll bring those back automatically. When querying from multiple entities, those merges. So this is the area where your queries are performance, and any performance enhancements that you can get in this area will make your queries run better and often prevent them from breaking. So, and I'm going to come back to that in a second when we talk about performance. You can see on performance testing that the Dynamics 365 connector, the most commonly used connector in this world, it has really horrible performance. And I don't know if there are other factors impacting this, but I can tell you for certain, at least one factor impacting this performance is that when you do lookup, when you have lookups in your query, the D365 connector automatically brings back the GUID, that big, long, meaningless database ID, and it also brings back an expandable column. It creates the merge automatically on every single lookup field. And because it's creating all those merges, whether you need them or not, it's going to eat up a lot of performance when you click the close and apply button. That's why those queries, if you've done this before, those queries using the D365 connector can take just a horrible amount of time to resolve. Okay, so at very least, even if you decide you don't want to use the Power Query Builder, if you're working in this world, I recommend that you switch from the D365 online connector to the CDS connector, because you get just a huge boost in performance. And then this 4 seconds between the CDS connector and the Fetch XML just really is kind of meaningless in terms of the other benefits that you get from Power Query Builder. And then finally, when it comes to these weird fields, the multi-entity fields, I really prefer the way that the Fetch handles them, because they usually when you're using those fields, you end up really wanting to get those multiple entities into a single column so that you can report on them together, and that typically requires some modifications in the query query editor, and it's just easier to get that to happen if you get just one column that says type and one column that has the GUID and another column that holds the database value. I got a lot of this from a blog post, and I put the link to that in the slides, which we'll be getting you, okay? So I think that's, you guys can, that blog post, I think it's like a 10 to 15 minute read. It's probably really worth your time if you work in this area a lot. There actually is a fourth connector that's in preview right now. It's called the TDS endpoint connector. So if you are familiar with our you there's two ways to connect data. You can either import data, or you can actually do what's called a direct connect. And with a direct query, you actually get data updates pretty much in real time. And in this world where where the Common Data Service meets Power BI, you've never been able to do that direct query before because you couldn't get access to the SQL database that holds the tables. But with the TDS endpoint connector, and you can get limited access to the SQL database now. But I want to caution you, unless you have asked the critical question, and I'm going to tell you what it is in a second, you don't want to use direct query, because when you use direct query, you lose a lot of the big power of Power BI. You can't connect other tables. You can't, there's things you can't do with direct query. So the critical question is this: you need to ask your users, how often are you going to look at this report? And if the answer is once a day, once a week, once a month, you don't need the data to update constantly. That's a waste of resources. If they if they're looking at it once a month, if you update it a few times a day, which you can do with an import, then that's the way to do it. The orange box is just to remind me mostly that I have a commitment to do an Azure everyday on this topic. So if you are not familiar with Azure Everyday, go out to YouTube and type in Azure Everyday. It's a channel that Pragmatic Works does, where we put up a 2 to 4 minute video every day that has to do with stuff that lives in the Azure space, including all the Power Platform, all the Power Platform players, Power BI. And so I'll be adding something on that real soon. That's hopefully like in the next week. And then I just wanted to talk about the big benefits for using Power BI with Dynamics 365. If you've done, it didn't look like I had a lot of people that may know about this, so I'm going to spend a little extra time here. One of the things that happens in Dynamics 365, for instance, when you're creating a view, or in the CDS as well, I'm saying D365, but all of this applies to both D365 and other common data service sources. If you are creating a view of, say, accounts, and you want to pull in emails and phone numbers from a contact, you can do that in a view because there's a direct relationship in the database between accounts and contacts, and you can actually make a connection from accounts to something, to a table that's connected to contacts other than 2 levels deep. And in a view, that's usually enough. But when you're talking about a workflow, things can maybe get kind of sticky. So especially if you've got a lot of customization in your database, you can really end up having to do a lot of workarounds using child workflows and stuff like that to make those connections more than 2 levels deep. And it's a restriction that the folks that I worked with on D365 team ended up hitting. We ran up against that often. And With Power BI, you don't have that kind of restriction. If you can find a key, you can make those merges happen really easily. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about is one of the things you hear often in the Dynamics 365 world is this, I think it's a pretty big buzzword in all of IT right now, is integration. And when as a developer, when I think of integration, I'm always thinking about co-locating data in two different tables. And so if you truly need to co-locate data in two different tables, Power BI is not the tool you want to use. And so what I mean by a good example of that would be if you were using Dynamics 365 CRM and you wanted all of the closed sales to automatically be populated in your accounting software sales order table, you'd need something other than Power BI to make that happen. But what I found is a lot of times clients say the word integration when they really only want to see two sources in a single report. And that is something that is perfect for Power BI that will save time, money, resources. You know, it's a great way to leverage Power BI. Okay, so real quick, I thought I saw a question that really, what is the meaning relationship of the oh, okay, I am going to get to that. So, Pete, my buddy, thanks, Pete. I'm so glad you're here. The relationship of the common data service, I'm going to get to it in a minute, I promise. Okay, so with that though, oh yeah, actually it's this slide. Oh, perfect timing. So Dynamics 365 has about a 16-year history. In 2004, Microsoft came up with the idea of building a product called Microsoft CRM. It was their answer to Salesforce. And Microsoft CRM has a back end that eventually, oh, okay, so wait a minute, I said this wrong. So Microsoft CRM then morphed into Microsoft Dynamics 365, same product, all right? Same product, new name. Microsoft's famous for that. And the back end of Dynamics 365 is the common data service. So basically they took the back end of CRM and they turned it into what they now call the common data service, and that's the relationship. And what they did in that whole thing is they kind of widened out the uses of the common data service. Instead of just serving CRM needs, it's now this kind of broad, it always was kind of this broader development tool that can be used to create almost any kind of database that you can come up with. And it's all kind of packaged together in the Microsoft stack. And that's why when you talk about CDS apps you may be creating for Power Apps, that you're really just kind of creating a subset of what's in Dynamics 365 CRM, okay? And what happened in 2004 in CDS, there were limitations in the back end. So all these developers that started working with the product discovered these limitations and started building these tools. It's a really great little gadget box. It's like a really cool toolbox, great name, right? XRM toolbox. And then the developers put those out in this toolbox so that other developers can grab them. And so there are over 100 developer tools. And so there's some things you need to know about them. Some of them are really great, some of them not so much. So let me give you some examples. In the CDS, you can get visibility into all views, including user-created views, using a tool in the XRM toolbox. And in fact, you can convert a user view into a system view. Very handy. There's another tool that lets you get full visibility, actually several tools, let you get full visibility into the security roles, who's assigned to those roles, what roles are duplicates. A lot of times I've seen some really bad situations where the security roles end up over time getting to be a real mess, and a good cleanup of security roles can really help the system run a little bit better. And there are a couple of tools that help with that. There's a sitemap tool that before version 9 of Dynamics 365, there was no sitemap editor, and there was a really great sitemap editor in the XRM toolbox. So that's the tools will require you to be Dynamics 365 CS admin. Some will not. And then I wrote Think Spider-Man because I think of Spider-Man's dad with great with power comes great responsibility. So if you're using one of these tools, you must always, I'm not even exaggerating, always test them in your sandbox. You may have something in your environment that will break if you use some of these tools that are that powerful. So just be careful. And then also when you get into XRM toolbox, places for you to send money to send money to developers. The folks that create this stuff, they're mostly doing it for the love of the product and to support their own practices. And if you know 10, 15 you to them things current. A developer that created Power Query Builder actually has a very robust website, and there's at least one link to it in this deck that you'll get. He and sending him, you know, $10 really helps him to keep that website current. All right, with that, let's see what I got next. I'm going to go back to do a deeper dive. So I need to change screens. Let's go back over here, and I want to talk about getting the XRM toolbox. Well, that's the wrong page. Hold on. My page got harshed. Well, okay, we'll do this again. All right. So this is the XRM toolbox. And to download the XRM toolbox, it's so simple. You're just going to click the green button and next through the process. And it's very, very simple. And actually, let me get one more window while I'm here. Okay. There we go. And so when you get into the XRM toolbox, there we go. Option one, whether you want to start page or not, you don't have to have one. I always work with one, find it to be really handy. It plays with the recently used my favorites. But what I want to talk about now is I want to talk about connections. So you have to tell XRM toolbox, you have to tell XRM toolbox where the database is. Just like the other. And to do that, they give you a wizard. We're really going to concentrate on the connection wizard, but not in the scope of this webinar. You can probably find information on them at the website or Query Builder. Get interested in it. This wizard. Next thing I want to show you is in back over there. So you see, let me make this bigger. Up here in the URL is this right here. The URL that I'm highlighting appears on every single page in the database. It's the base URL. Okay, so this part of the base URL is actually the organization name, and that's a unique name. So when I come over here to the wizard where I've got where it's highlighted, where it says organization, all I have to do is put in my org name, and that's all I need for that organization URL. So if you can actually sync your Dynamics 365 database through your Active Directory and have an internet-facing deployment. That's a pretty common configuration. And if I had that, I would click this box. This is just a sample database, so I don't have that. I'm going to click next, and then you go in and you give it credentials, because you always have to have credentials. At, where am I? Pragmaticworks.com. Don't forget that. Let's see. Oops. Okay, and then this box right here, I always check because I want to encrypt these passwords. And I'm going to click next. It's going to test the connection for me, and then it's going to give me a chance to rename the connection. I'm not actually going to finish this because I already have the connection. So I was a CRM developer. I had probably 50 or 60 of these connections in my connection file. And actually, if you are a developer, there's a way for you to share your connection file with your colleagues. But if you're always using the same CDS database or the same Dynamics 365 database, you might only have one or two. So that's creating a connection. And then I want to talk about these two. They look like they're going to the same tool. Oh, wait, let me show you all the tools. So I downloaded all the tools. That's another thing that you can choose, but you can see there's hundreds of tools in here. And I go in, and it's one thing XRM Toolbox is really great with is these search boxes. So if I wanted to go in here and look for Power Query Builder, I just start typing, and I then I just pick this one, right? And it automatically connected me. But if it hadn't connected me, let me show you that. If I go in here and see, let's go back to my start page. If I went in here and went, so this one has a connection, you can see that right here. This one does not have a connection. So if I click here, it's going to look for a connection now. So I can come up to the connect button and just choose that one connection that I created. And now it's just going to connect. It's going to ask me where I want it connected. There you have it. So it is very simple once you create those connections. And then the first button that you have to click is this load entities. So it's just loading the tables. And they're all in here. They're alphabetical. And there is one of those great search boxes. So if I wanted opportunities, I could just start typing it. I don't want opportunities this time though. I'm going to take accounts. When I click accounts, it brings in a list of all the views in the system, including user views. So if I was really building a report on this data, I will have created a view in the app to support my report. And we're going to talk about that again and again here. So I just clicked active accounts, and what it did is it just brought over all of the fields that are in active accounts. And if I wanted other data from the table, I could just come over here and I could pick and choose. So if I wanted to add, excuse me, some telephone numbers, I could do this. I could just take all of these, right? Take them over. All right. So this is how I'm telling Power Query Builder what fields I want to take over. So I come into the menu ribbon and I'm actually going to click this button. Oh wait, I'm sorry, I forgot. I need to talk about service URLs first. So a service URL is just to tell Power Query Builder where your database lives. So you can see when I click that, I get two tabs. There's a base URL, which this base URL is that same URL I showed you in Dynamics 365 that I highlighted for you with the organization name. I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to come over to Power Query or Power BI, and I'm going to create a blank. This is just a blank workbook. I'm just going to create a blank query in my blank workbook. And I'm just going to take what I have on my clipboard and I'm just going to paste it right in the formula bar. And then I have to come over here and rename this 365 CE base URL. Okay. And while I'm here, I'm just going to create another blank query. So remember, in my earlier demo, I used a template. These are the quick steps that you need to create your template. All right. So now I'm going to go back to the other tab, the service route URL. Let's look at it a little bit. So you can see it's a formula because it's got an equal sign. And this piece of it is that query that I just built. So it's just saying, take that first query, the base URL, and append this stuff. And that is going to actually create the API call into the database. So now I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to take this second query. I'm just going to paste my clipboard into the formula bar again. And you can see here, it's giving me the right thing. It's giving me the API call. And then I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to call this the service route URL. Just exactly as it's titled on those tab names. And so the reason that this is a great opportunity for a template is these three pieces. These three pieces will be in every single workbook that you use with Power Query Builder, and they're going to look exactly the same. Okay, and so if I was creating a template now, I'd close and apply this, and then I would come up. Just give it a second. latency from the share. Sorry about that. And then I'm going to come over to File, and I'm going to do Save As. And then when this dialog comes up, here's the important piece. You have to change the type because Power BI thinks I want to just create another Power BI file, but what I really want is I want a Power BI template file. And then you give it a name and you save it. And I've already created this, so I'm not going to save it again, but that's really important. And you don't have to remember this stuff. I've got it in the slides. So you'll get a copy of the slides and you'll have all that. And then I want to go back to XRM Toolbox, and I'm going to go back to select table and columns. It remembers those selections that I made earlier, right? So it's got all this. And now I just need to create the fetch XML for the data query. I'm just going to click Update Fetch XML, and it gives me a list of the fields that are going to go into my fetch XML. And that list is a little bit different than what you had in just the view because it adds stuff. Oh, you know what? Let me go back. I want to pick one more thing here. I want to pick, let me see, I think I want to pick status. I have a method for this madness, so let me create that fetch again. Almost forgot it. So I'm going to update the fetch, and now I've got that list. I'm going to come over. I want to talk about these options. Now, I always click these, and the reason is if I don't click them and need them later, it's a real pain to get them. But if I click them in the front end and I don't need them, I can get rid of them. So let's talk about what they do. The first one seems pretty obvious. It's just going to add a record URL for each row back into the application database. And that's really handy. If I link in that report that I showed you for the sales manager, I could put a link to each opportunity right in that matrix. And then if I'm the sales manager talking to my folks, and I wanted to see more detail about that opportunity, all I have to do is click the link and I'm right there. And it doesn't close the report, everything, I've got everything I need. And then this use all attributes just brings over some metadata that allows you to do some advanced modeling in Power BI. And so the way that this tool usually gets used is you do this initial data call, and then you use the Power Query editor to build whatever else you need for your report. So this is really just a quick starting point in a lot of cases. When I come to this menu, it actually changed a little bit. And so now what I want to do is I want to generate the fetch XML. And so I'm just going to click the button, and this is what I called hieroglyphics earlier, but it's not really that deep. If you look at it, you can almost tell what it's doing. It's creating a list, and then you come down a little bit, and it's converting that list to a table. And here's where it converts to a table. And these are the column names in the table. And you scroll down a little bit and it renames all of the columns back to the display name rather than the schema name in the table. And I think that's pretty much all it does. But it's a lot of characters to do this really powerful job. And something about the fetch is super efficient in Power BI. It just really leans out the query for you. And so I just clicked in there and I did Control A to select it all and a Control C to copy it all. And now I'm just going to go back to Power BI, or maybe Power BI. No, Power BI. And I need to go back into the query editor. And here's that blank query that I created, and I'm going to go into the advanced editor. I'm just going to copy and paste. That's what I had on my clipboard. I'm telling it done. I have to rename the query, call it accounts. And then you'll notice that fetch builder brought in some stuff that you probably don't need, right? So it brings in GUIDs from the database. And the only time that I wouldn't get rid of a GUID is if you're going to be merging to another application. You may want to keep the GUID if the same GUID lives in the other app. But if you're going to merge to another table that lives in the same database, you don't need it, because the data integrity, for instance, the data integrity of primary contact is going to be maintained by the relationship. And the other thing it brings in, let's find that status that I brought in. So status in Dynamics 365 works like an options. It is an option set. It's just a specialized option set. And when you have option sets, there's always a database value, which this is the database value, and it's always numeric. And then each database value gets assigned a display name. It's usually not the same. And so you don't need those database values are pretty useless for the most part. I hardly ever keep them. I can't even think of a reason why you would keep them. And so one of the first steps that I always do is I go in and I choose columns, and I go through and I look for anything that ends in ID, because those are the GUIDs. I'm going to get rid of them. And then I'm also going to go in, I'm going to get rid of anything that's got parentheses. That one's already gone, but if I scroll down, there's status state code. That parentheses is indication to you that that is something that is a database value. And so I'm going to get rid of it there, and I'm going to get rid of it there. Okay? I'm going to tell it okay. And so one of the things that we talked about when we were looking at the 3 different connectors is we talked about how the D365 connector always creates an automatic merge. There's going to be times when you really do need a merge, so I wanted to show that it's really easy. This is where I think Power Query Builder pays for itself. So I'm just going to come up here and I'm going to go select tables, and let's say I want to connect this to the contacts table because I want to pick up some information that lives on a contact record. And I'm going to pick a view, contact, active contacts, and I'm just going to go over and update the fetch. You'll notice these options persist in every open session, so I don't have to check them again. I'm going to generate the fetch. I'm going to click in here, and I'm going to do copy all and copy C. And then I'm going to come back over to Power BI, and I'm going to create a new blank query. I'm going to open the advanced editor, and I'm going to paste that in. Now I have contacts. I'll even rename it. And then I'm going to go up to accounts and merge. I'm going to make the merge to contacts from account name to company name. And oh, there's some stuff in here. So here's parent stuff with parentheses. if I had taken the time to clean up the second query, I would have gotten rid of those. And I'm just going to tell it okay, and I've got my merge. So I'm just going to, let's see, let's pick up the email and business phone. Oh, wait, and let's try that again. Let's pick up the name, the email, and the business phone. There we go. There we go. And I want to show, let's see, where are we in time? We have time. Okay. Wait, I talked too much. Why did it? That always happens to me. Why? Okay. Real quick, let me go through the rest of the slides. Speed through them. I apologize for the need to drop. I get that. It's busy. We'll cover that. Let's just go to the best practices. Anytime you're working with Power BI, you say if you start with the end in mind, you know, Stephen Covey isn't a good reason. He had that. I actually take a piece of paper and I map out my reports. And usually I share that with the users that I'm building them for, save you tons of time. When it comes to Dynamics 365 or common data service data, you must always think of data integrity. A good example in that report that I just created for you that I showed you with the rating, if you did make the rating mandatory, you would have garbage in your report. And sometimes you required fields at the beginning, but sometimes you need to use the process bar to make it later in the process, in the business process. You always want to start with a view that shows as much data as possible. That I'll share with you when we get there. Self-explanatory. And then use templates. Another slide for that. Remove the unnecessary fields that you'll get, and then work on your skills. So the basic skills that you need to use this effectively, when you're working with the other users on reports, there's always this iterative cycle report. They say, "Oh, that's great, but what if it did this?" And you go again, and you show them the next thing, and they go, "Well, what if we could do this?" And you do it again, and you keep going round and round till you get something that they love. And so every time you do that, you have to, a lot of times, change the data set. And so you can go back to Power Query Editor, recreate the fetch, and if you know how to edit in the advanced editor, you can just copy the fetch and paste it into the advanced editor and not have to redo any steps that you had to do in a query editor afterwards. And so the stuff that you need to know is you need to know that there's a comma at the end of every code in the advanced editor. You need to know that the name of the step above it appears in the step below it. And it's really, it's basics. And you can find tons of sources for learning that. Let me just see what I have on the, so this is a slide on creating templates. I'm not going to go through it because we're out of time. This is using templates, so I'm not going to go through. These are some steps that you might want to think about using that I use regularly. I use product to clean things in the query editor. And with that, I'm more than willing to stick around and answer questions. You can you can email me. My email is going to be, I think, in the slide deck. And let's see, what's the meaning of the common data? I answered that. Can you show us how to build a D365? I did show how to create that connection. Sometimes Power Query will not pull in related fields in a CRM view. Is this, wait a minute, I lost the question. Where'd it go? Sorry. Sometimes, sometimes Power Query will not pull in related fields in a CRM view. Is there a fix for this? Yeah, Susie, oh, my sweet friend Susie. Susie, the fix is herself. And you can do that with Power Query Builder. You can also do it easily with the CDS editor. I am really now recommending that you move everything away from the D365 connector because it's just too slow. And if you talk more about best practices, yeah. So the template, if you want to talk more about the template, you and I have to talk anyway, so we can talk more about that. Is XRM toolbox useful for finance? Okay, so I'm so glad Andre asked this question. I tried to make this connection. I think it's entirely possible, but I am not financial. I'm not a Business Central expert, so I wasn't able to make that happen. But since it's built on the CDS, I think it's entirely possible. And if you're still on the phone, Andre, maybe we can take this offline because I'm really interested in this question. So just email me. And then can you filter on fields before creating the fetch XML? Oh, that's one thing I didn't tell you, very important. When you choose the view or when you create the view in the app, any filters that you put on the view carried over into the Power Query Builder. And so that's really important. So yes, you can filter before creating XML. Parker already left. Sorry. Do you did you determine the type of merge? You can determine the type of merge. I just chose the left outer because it was faster. And then if D365 changes the database name, you display the name of one column. And with you email me. And thank you. Unless anybody else has more questions, if you have more questions, please email me. About it. all for your time.
Go ahead.
Oh, I think that's it.
All right. Sharon, thank you so much for hosting. For anybody exiting the webinar video, you guys will receive the recording in your email box tomorrow around 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you guys want to look for it before that, you our YouTube page under Pragmatic Works under free training, and all of our archive webinars and present webinars are there for you guys to see. As Sharon said, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to her, myself. We are more than happy to help. Sharon, again, thank you so much for hosting. It was a wonderful pleasure. You did an awesome job. And that's for everybody else. Hope you guys have a good rest of your Tuesday and enjoy